Met Council members will participate in this meeting via telephone or other electronic means, and the Met Council meeting will be conducted under Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, at the date and time stated above. This meeting will be streamed live and recorded. We encourage you to monitor the meeting remotely. If you have comments, I encourage members of the public to email us at public.info@metc.state.mn.us. We will respond to your comments in a timely manner. And with that, let's do a roll call.
Thank you. Fredson has not joined at this time. Sterner? Oh, got a thumbs up acknowledging that. Bento?
Here. Aye.
Wolf?
Here.
Zarin?
Present.
And Lindstrom?
Here, here, here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And no objection. The agenda for today's meeting is approved. And that takes us to the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 9th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Sterner motion to approve them.
And a second.
Bento seconds.
Very good. Roll call and welcome Councilmember Fredson.
Thank you very much. Roll call for approval of the minutes. Fredson?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Bento?
Aye.
Wolf?
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
Zarin?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to our non-consent business agenda, since we don't have anything on the consent agenda today. First item we have is a master contract for factoring services for our facilities. Mr. Ward, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Joe Ward. I'm in the Support Services Business Unit and Process Engineering specifically. And I'm here today to talk to you about renewal of our wet-dry vectoring contract for our plants. Next slide, please. So just a little quick background. What is our vectoring used for? It's used for removing built-up materials in places where it shouldn't be. And if not removed, it eventually causes blockages, which can be a problem that shuts down the process. And our vectoring trucks they're just a giant large vacuum that's mounted on a truck. So it's a mobile huge vacuum. Next slide, please. And a good example of this is what we do at Empire. So at Empire, we have digestion facilities, and each year, one of them at least is cleaned out. And if they're not cleaned out, which vectoring is part of the process, struvite, which is like a sandy material there, it's different in different places, but there it sort of forms the sand that prevents the sludge from transferring heat around the digester. And we use the heat to warm up our biosolids to Class B so that they can be land spread. And so if that doesn't happen, if there's too much sand in the wrong place, then it will prohibit the heat from moving around and not allow us to meet our Class B permit, which then you can't land apply. So it's just one example of how we use it that I came across. Next slide, please. So we went out for bids on February 18th. We received 3 responsive bids for our 9 wastewater plants. Goliath Inc. met the requirements at the lowest cost for Blue Lake, East Bethel, and Rogers. And then Schlumpka Vac Truck Services for the remainder, which are Metro, Seneca, Empire, Eagles Point, Hastings, and St. Croix Valley. You can see there's sort of a split between the southeast and the west and north sides there. And we are estimating a $322,000 annual expenditure and a 3-year contract not to exceed $966,000. And that contract is for a 2-year fixed price with a 1-year option to extend. And at that point, they are allowed to request an increase in prices up to 5%. And obviously with documentation and some discussion and negotiation. The Office of Equal Opportunity did not set an MCUB goal for this project. Next slide, please. And so with that, the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorizes award and execution of purchase orders for Vector services at MCES facilities with 2 vendors to include Goliath Hydrovac, Inc., Schlumka Vac Truck Service, Inc., for a combined total award amount not to exceed $966,850. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Ward? I can't see all of you, so just pipe up if you have a question or comment.
Hey, Chair Lindstrom, this is Sterner. I just was wondering, you had a third, I guess, vendor that was looking for. Were they just hiring all 9 locations? That they didn't get any of the 9 locations, or were there other factors in awarding to these 2 and not that third one that applied? Or bid, I should say, is the right word.
Mr. Chair, committee members, that's correct. They actually were Schlumka Services out of Hastings was the third bidder, and they were just higher at every single plant than both Goliath and Schlumka Vac Truck, which is out of Inver Grove Heights.
There's
Right,
2
thanks very
Schlumkas.
It gets
Is that
confusing.
like the same company? It's got to be the same company, right? I
It's
don't get it.
It's 2. They're related. I believe they're cousins, something like that.
Really? Fascinating.
Family business that split.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other, Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions other than maybe a request. We usually, when they do like interceptor rehabilitation and stuff, they give us gross pictures of what it looks like in the inside before they fix it. I want to know what the sandy stuff looks like that you sucked out of the digesters.
Perhaps you could just email Councilmember Wolf all gross pictures from the wastewater treatment plant. I don't think all of us need to see that.
There is no shortage.
And I would move approval of the item.
Is there a second?
I would second, Sterner second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Fredson,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zarin,
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that takes us to our second item, the Coon Rapids Interceptor Rehabilitation, phase number 1. Mr. Wadeen, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be back. Mr. Chair and council members, again, my name is Tim Wadeen. I am the Assistant Manager with Interceptor Engineering, and I'm here to present to you on business item 2021-78 related to the Coon Rapids Interceptor Rehabilitation Phase 1 project and land acquisition. Next slide, please. Full background on the project. Interceptor improvements are required to renew sewers or MCES interceptors in the city of Coon Rapids. You can see on the map image there, the blue line is the interceptor route. Runs from roughly north of Highway 10 through Earlson Nature Center down to lift station L34 in Coon Rapids. Our televising program has identified this as having corrosion issues and deficiencies. The project that we are moving forward with in design will restore the integrity to the system. and really looking to protect the public and environmental health. Land acquisition is needed so that we can temporarily convey wastewater while we are rehabilitating this pipe. And you can see from that red line, we'll run that preliminarily scheduled to run that temporary conveyance along the north side of Highway 10, cross underneath Highway 10, and run south along the west side, roughly, of a railroad facility, a railroad track that's in that location. There's a number of areas there that will be crossing through not only the Erlinson Nature Center, but through a residential area. And so we'll need some temporary easements in these areas to be able to install our temporary conveyance system. Next step, or next slide, please. So the temporary easements are required from approximately 8 properties in residential and commercial areas in the project area. So acquisition will be completed through negotiations and, if necessary, through condemnation. Next slide, please. So our proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council pass Resolution 2021-12, authorizing the acquisition of temporary easements for the Coon Rapids Interceptor Rehabilitation Project, and for staff to initiate condemnation proceedings if needed. Are there any questions?
I'll start off with one. How often does condemnation need to take place where a resident or a business is just like, no way, can you put a temporary thing across my front yard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. Janine may be able or Ms. Clancy may be able to tell us a little bit more about how frequently we need to go through and do condemnation. But I do know that we've had it happen on a number of projects that I can think of. I can think of a project in Brooklyn Park and Osseo right now where we are working through some condemnation proceedings for that project to ensure that that stays on task. We started condemnation proceedings with a project that we did in Vadnais Heights and Maplewood. A lot of times, those condemnation proceedings are there because we're getting close to starting the project and we need to stay on schedule so that we can adequately address our deficiencies, our pipe deficiencies, time with the project. And it's just a way to keep the project going, allow us to be able to access those locations as we still continue to negotiate with the landowner there. Janine, did you have anything that you'd like to add there?
No, Chair Lindstrom, council members, Tim handled this the question quite well, and we do ask for authorization for condemnation, frankly, to protect our organization so that we can keep advancing the project. But our Office of General Counsel and our real estate office works very closely with environmental services to try to work with the property owners to find a solution that's fair and follows both state and federal law. But we do this in order to make sure that we can keep the project going on schedule. Thank you.
And is there any sort of payment to the property owners or not? That's not part of the picture?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there is payment to the property owner. Really, it's a method to keep the process going, to make sure that we're acquiring or getting access to that parcel in a timely manner. But we still do pay the property owner for either the temporary easement or the permanent easement, depending on the project. In this case, it would be for the temporary easement.
Thank you. Councilmember Zirin?
Councilmember Zirin moves the business item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Wolf seconds.
If no other questions, then we'll take the roll.
Thank you. Fredson?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Vento? Councilmember Vento?
Aye. Sorry.
Thank you. Wolf?
Aye.
Zarin?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to our final item, the joint use agreement for MCES ERS 07 and Minneapolis Central City Storm Tunnel. Mr. Schwartz or Mr. Gordon?
That'd be me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jeff Schwartz. I'm the Minneapolis area project manager for the MCS Interceptor Engineering Department. I'm here to present business item 2021-79, which is a request to enter into a joint use agreement with the city of Minneapolis for construction of the Central City Storm Tunnel project. Next slide, please. At the intersection of Portland and Washington in downtown Minneapolis shown here, city storm and sanitary sewers and council sanitary sewer facilities are interconnected. The city's existing storm tunnel comes in from the west, turns to the north, and drains into the Mississippi River. Council Interceptor 1MN310 brings sanitary flow from the south to Emergency Relief Structure ERS 07, where it's directed to the east on Washington Avenue, where in the event of an emergency allows overflow into the storm sewer. To increase the storm capacity and reduce pressurization in existing downtown storm tunnels, the city is planning the Central City Storm Tunnel project that includes installation of a 12-foot diameter tunnel under Washington Avenue from Hennepin to Chicago Avenues. A portion of the tunnel will pass under a shaft that provides access to both city and council facilities. Next slide, please. This 3D rendering shows the existing council facilities in blue, the existing access tunnel from the shaft to ERS 07, both the city and council use to access the existing storm and sanitary sewers in green, the existing city storm tunnel, storm sewer in black, and the new storm tunnel in what my wife calls teal. As you can see, the new storm tunnel will pass through the bottom of the shaft. The shaft, a city sanitary sewer connection, and a ladder access need to be modified to accommodate the new tunnel. All the work will be completed and paid for by the city. A joint use agreement is required to define city and council responsibilities during the Central City Storm Tunnel project and continued access following the project. Next slide, please. The key elements of the agreement are that the city will manage and pay for all design and construction work. The council will provide input during the design process and will inspect council facilities impacted by the construction. And both the city and council will use the access shaft to operate and maintain their respective facilities after construction. Next slide, please. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorizes its regional administrator to enter into a joint use agreement with the city of Minneapolis to accommodate city construction of the proposed Central City Storm Tunnel in 2021 to 2022. Next slide, please. And thank you. That's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Schwartz? About the presentation or the colors utilized in any of the graphics, any sort of questions at all?
This is Councilmember Fredson.
Yes, Councilmember Fredson
Thank
has a
you,
question.
Chair. Yep. Thank you, Chair. I believe I'm recognized here unless I'm having some internet problems. I just wanted to say I thought that graphic sort of illustrates how complex the system is, both in terms of its build, but also like how you pay for it. And so just wanted to recognize that. And all of it's underground. And so I just don't think the average person sees that complexity for what it's worth. So thank you.
Yeah, that stood out for me too. No question about it. Other questions or comments?
Wolf moves approval if there's no other questions.
Is there a second?
It's Fredson, I'll second. Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Gotta get caught up. Okay. So who was the second, please?
Councilmember Fredson.
Fredson, thank you very much. Fredson?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Zarin?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to near the end of our agenda. General Manager's report. Lisa, what do you got for us today?
I'm pretty boring today. I really don't have anything other than we're starting to talk about, post-pandemic, being able to have folks that have been required to work from home based on the governor's orders to begin to come back into the workplace to do their work. So we're going to try and do a process of looking at what would that look like in the future, given some of the advantages we've seen from that as well. So we'll probably be looking at greater flexibility for employees where they have jobs that they can do well from home, or at least parts of it. Not many times there's aspects of the work that they definitely need to be in the workplace for, and there's some things that they can actually be probably more focused and efficient by doing from home if they've got the right setup. So we'll be looking at that. We don't have a specific date, but we know it'll be coming soon, given the news on the vaccines, that eventually we will be able to entertain that idea. I was thinking today we should probably revisit this question if you've got information items, because occasionally things will come up on your radar of topics that you'd like more information on that we might not be thinking you're interested in or have a need for. So anytime you have an information item that you'd like, reach out to me directly, or you can bring it up in the committee meeting. Let us know and we'll get something put together.
Anything come to mind for council members immediately? Councilmember Vento?
This isn't regarding topics for information items, but is there any season? I know you don't have a date, but is there a kind of are we talking about 2 months, 6 months? How long before folks might be returning to work, Lisa?
Well, I'm going to go from what I think I recall hearing last. It would be probably closer to July before we would be looking, and then it would be kind of a phased-in approach. Again, we need to make sure that our workplaces have the changes that would support that. And as I said, we want to work through this process of thinking about different options that we might make for our staff too. So we'll be doing that in May. And so in June, we think we'll have a proposal for how to approach that with a little different flexibility than what we've had in the past. So not real fast for sure, because until the pandemic, until a vaccine hits enough of the percentage of population, we still need to make sure we don't get, spikes where the healthcare workers are overwhelmed in our hospital systems.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I have an idea for an information presentation. So when I first came on the council, I've been on the Environment Committee from day one on the council. When I first came on, the council was not keeping up with how much of the system needed to be televised or otherwise inspected to ensure that the interceptors stayed in a state of good repair. And there's been a real effort to fix that and get on top of assessing our system so that things don't crumble before we get a chance to reinforce them. And maybe if we could get an update on how that's going. I know they've got new technology too, where they can stick little like radar balls into pipes to tell what the wall thickness is. A lot of cool things that are happening technology wise. So if we could just hear a little bit about the work and how much of the system has been inspected and where we're standing.
Absolutely. We can set that up. I think we can impress you with the new technology, and we can also give you some of those gross pictures that you were seeing earlier. So we'll have plenty of both for that. So we
Got
will.
that to look forward to.
We'll put that on our list. Gross pictures.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion. We are in a much better place than back when you were referring to that situation, and I'm grateful for that. Our reliability shows it.
Chair Lindstrom, I wanted to acknowledge Councilmember Sterner has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, council member.
Okay, I just had a few things, and I think we've seen a couple of these things already, but I'd like to maybe get an update on the PFAS, see what's going on that, and like with the salt in the water, like is a safe salting working? Are we seeing a reduced levels? And then the third thing would be just like the plants, like council member Wolf brought about the pipes. I'm thinking about like what's the plan of the pipes, building new plants. I know like Hastings is in there, but if I could see the overall plan, I guess like in the next 20, 30 years, what we're looking at for that would be helpful. So
We got Rogers on the horizon as well, of course.
yeah,
That's
Crow
true.
River.
Pretty good items, and I can assure you we won't build a new plant without you doing some approvals, so you'll definitely be seeing new plant plans here. We are moving forward with Hastings after we thought we'd already be up and running that, but then when the population growth slowed down so much, we delayed that quite significantly. But we're excited we're going to be moving into construction on that. So it'll be, and Hastings will be happy to get us out of downtown, so it'll be a win-win for all.
Looking out like 15, 20 years, I saw something about a new plant or a potential new plant, maybe in Scott County or Carver County. Is that?
You probably heard some reference to land acquisition, which we usually try to do well in advance of needing the plant, because finding land for that is sometimes a little not in my backyard kind of reaction. So we tend to try and look for those opportunities early on. And yeah, I think that's probably about right, 20 years in that range, but I'll make sure that we can give you kind of that future look when we talk about new plants and what we see on the horizon.
Good suggestions, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
These are all interesting topics, so it will be fun to queue them up for you.
Very good. And with that, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
all right, thanks. Good night.
Have a great afternoon.